Good morning, Trumptopia. I'm your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, on this 195th, or is it the 6th day of Trumptopia? Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Interesting headlines, top of the morning today. The first thing it made me think of was that I see a movie triptych in the not too distant future. The Fall of the Scaramucci, Return of the Scaramucci, Scaramucci's Revenge, or something like that. This interesting announcement that the Scaramouche is going to hold some massive Facebook Live. Here's what did me wrong, how they did me wrong. Oh, woe is me, they did me wrong. He loved the president so much it was palpably sickening. And I find that this, I'm sure, is going to play out as some kind of media grab for the Scaramouche. He's going to try to establish himself somewhere. He gave up everything, apparently. Or as much, or whatever everything means to a billionaire, to be in the White House. But it's his ejection. He didn't quit, by the way. Breaking news for anybody who's under the misunderstanding that he resigned. He didn't resign. The Spicy resigned, to the best of my knowledge, in disgust. He was like, no, I don't like the Scaramouche. I gotta go. This is all so Shakespearean, folks. It's epic. If there's any undiscovered collaborative writers down to write in a team setting, because this is so many fucking volumes of crazy, one person couldn't put it all together into one thing. I've got some ideas and like a team management paradigm in my head. But moving on, the second interesting headline tied into that theme, because Scaramouche's one big tragic flaw was that he was going to crack down, and he got cracked down on, right? He was going to crack down and put an end to all this leaking, find out who the leakers were, and then somehow he got roped into an interview where I don't know what kind of defense he's going to put up for how uncensored he was in that interview. And talk about a moment in American history. 10 days. Shortest lived tenure in that particular position, or just in general for like a high-ranking public servant at that level. Of just nothing but daily chaos in those 10 days, and daily scandal after miniature scandal of crazy, and then boom, summarily, how do you pronounce that word? Summarily fired by a military general, no less. Which brings me to my next sort of subject that I propose is one of those interesting bits of news not on the news, although just barely being toyed with on the fringes. There's commentary by some of the talking heads about this, but not any kind of deep, meaningful investigation or leadership in sort of reacting to this in any way, shape, or form yet. So I'm calling it out. If I had the production leverage, I'd be doing a whole, video montage introduction to a segment called Trump and His Generals. Cue the music and roll the B tape of Trump and generals. Alas, I'm relying on you, my dear listeners, to imagine all that. But here's what I've got to say about it, which is, I hope, salient and maybe worth following up on in general, and sort of, worth calling to to the attention of the mainstream public discourse. Observation number one. He went in there under this, waving this banner of draining the swamp, which he has not executed in any way, shape, or form, I think, that seems reasonable at all. It seemed haphazard, it seemed childish and like playground bully tactics in every direction, but not, I would like to point out, without some logic and clear intent. I'm not crediting that to Trump himself necessarily, but in the process of draining the swamp, there's been a curious sub-pattern that's emerged, and that is that he's fired some of his own people, or people that were approved to be in positions. First he fired a bunch of people, and then other people who were already in positions that he had approved them, or people he'd fired and replaced with other people. He then a few, not very many, but a few he suddenly has replaced with generals, upping the general number of his generals. And now, just in the last 48 hours, he's hit this blame game rage tactic, and he's beating his generals in some sort of public flogging. I don't go to Trump's Twitter account, not so much that I don't want to be on his account, although I don't want to give him the clicks or the eyeballs, and I don't want to follow him. No disrespect to anybody who might be butthurt by that, but I just don't. I don't follow very many politicians, and the few that I do, it's because I hope that they might be succeeding in not being seduced by the dark side. I usually end up unfollowing them. My point is, I'm not entirely sure how he worded all his verbal badgery, but I do see that all fronts of the corporate media are reporting that he's quite astoundingly and confusingly, after laying heaps of praise. But see, there's a general pattern of sort of bullshittery here. He talks about generals and the best generals and the most amazing generals and how he knows a bunch of generals. And I don't know that he knows a bunch of generals, and it seems unlikely, but he definitely fetishizes them in his public accolades. And now he's blaming whatever generals are in the way of success about objectives that he asked them to try to achieve, and that he gave them all the authority. He signed over complete warmongering freedom to the generals, and to their credit, because all people are souls and all souls are suffering. To their credit, we didn't hyper escalate anything too horribly in the first 6 months that I'm aware of. We are in some really morally repugnant permanent warfare that we haven't been allowing ourselves to call World War III for way too long. But I digress. The curiosity and the logic then extends, based on sort of a general understanding of his business tactics and the way he, behaves on his reality TV show. He's likely next going to do the following. I think he's going to fire either some, or, and you should start shitting your pants if he does the following, all of his generals, and hand select people, and it won't be beyond the pale, or beyond imagining that he'll select some people that are radically inappropriate or unqualified to become generals and fulfill that role. But I'm assuming he's going to try and find people in the military that are willing to be, to play the game the way he wants it to be played. Let's pause for a minute. Let's be really frank about the way this human being that is currently the President of the United States, because he is a human being, as I always kid, barring the unlikely chance that he's actually a robot, some sort of space alien or lizard king overlord, or as some people think, the savior itself in whatever new format the savior is coming in. All of which I find laughable. Unless he is one of those things, he's just another human being. A deeply troubled, deeply ill, spiritually maladied, deeply injured, traumatized, in deep need of healing fellow brother and in our family of meat puppets. We are just meat puppets to other higher order, levels of the universe in its unfolding. Okay, that's all crazy talk, right? But if he proceeds to, since he can't fire, or he's been talked out of firing any more people attached to his investigation into Russia. And it's funny because it's his in both ways. Like, it's his. It's the whole Russia investigation is happening under his watch, and it's his responsibility. Ultimately, he's the president of the United States. They'll report to him. They'll work alongside him as co-equal members of the executive branch, and can be rationalized as being seen as reporting to him. But it's also about him, right? Because look at who's being gathered to aid the dear and stoic Mueller. And he hasn't fired Jeff Sessions, so he has to fire people. I think it's one of the inherent sort of knee-jerk, deep down, he learned it from his pappy. Excuse me, coffee in this early in the morning. And he's got to fire some people, and I think the next logical place where this little political thriller is going to unfold, because it's a place where we will be tested as a nation, and it was predicted as such. If you want to think of the founding fathers as predicted, they themselves warned us. They warned themselves and each other and us that America won't fall to invasion from an external enemy. It'll fall from corruption and treason from within. And what's the easiest, simplest thing you do when you're the president of the commander-in-chief of the largest and most controversial military infrastructure on the planet? You get tempted and or seduced by ego and by money and by power and by sheer insanity and sociopathy to try to throw the military coup dictatorship Hail Mary pass. And let me tell you, call me crazy if you want, but it's a scary step to start intonating and threatening to fire generals as willy-nilly as a person like Donald Trump would or might, based on previous behavior. Because even if he isn't the guy that's going to try to insert himself as a military dictator, per se, someone really close to him or sucked up into that vacuum created by the firing of any generals might be inclined to think that way and have a rationale for it also being some glorious patriotic love for Trump in doing so. Let's pause for a moment. For anyone who hasn't heard this quote, I wish I had it right in front of me. It just kind of it's not one of those prepared things. It's one of those things where I'm like, that's true. I just remembered. This is so apropos right now. But this is a president. This is a man who is... I watched this on TV live, so I know that it is not fake news. It is not made up by the media. He said this on live television. War? I love war. All kinds of war. I'm good at war. I love war. It's great. Yes, with nuclear bombs, even with nuclear bombs, I love war. Something like that. I'm deeply paraphrasing it. I've made that meme already. It's floating around. And that meme I've verified and fact-checked is the correct phrasing, and I didn't fuck it up. Okay? I just don't have it. I didn't think to pull it up in time. But this is a person who's openly declared love for war. And even if he's innocent of quote-unquote collusion, which people are desperately clinging to the hope for, he is most overtly bromancy with our last and greatest enemy of war. And let's stop and think, for anybody who's naive enough to think, well, World War II was a long time ago, and the Cold War is very much over, and Russia's a different place, and Putin's a different... These are structural illnesses that I'm talking about. Let me break some news to you, folks. And I know that I tease that out and I get to this deep place a lot, but I think a lot of people are being drawn to the podcast that may have never heard this statement before. War is more than just an inevitable human expression of, power. Even if it were just that, and we could explain it away with only that sentence, the solution would still apply. The solution proposed, vis-a-vis any kind of transcendental Zen Buddhist, or arguably Christos' message, or also, Ibrahim kind of said the same shit, although it's not at the forefront of that. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe even the Prophet Muhammad spoke something about peace and love vis-a-vis, a transcendent knowledge of the divine. But I digress. The risk that becomes evident of falling into the darkest of all of the painfully obvious war ego traps is there, even if you don't account for the transcendental or the meta-structural of aspects of the universe. Because the military-industrial complex is the military-industrial complex. Period. There's no need to call it a conspiracy. There's the largest industry on the planet is producing the machines of death, for organized murder. And they want to make a profit. They want to invest in new designs. They want to keep pumping money into R&D. And the only way to do that is to sell their product. And the only way to really sell their product more, because all commercial systems, which are a kind of madness unto themselves, require infinite growth. That's why they're a madness. So even the most benign of the free market models, or the democratic, capitalist models, which are also just ideology and a kind of mental slavery, folks, they require infinite growth. Infinite growth in a finite system with finite resources equals death. Full stop. Period. So even if it wasn't an industry of making machines designed to kill, an industry that large alone that requires that much growth, any industry that requires growth that much, and needs to consume all of Mother Earth's offerings in an unsustainable way, will equal death. Alright. That is our entree to the transcendental, because we live in a society that is existentially way past the sustainability point and in deep denial about it. And, this example of our addiction to war and our ignoring its direct and indirect impact on our lives as individuals and our collective lives as a species and the health of all life in this womb we insist on calling a place, this mother that is nurturing us, that we insist on belittling, the depersonifying into a rock, flat or globe-shaped, otherwise. War is the most obvious of the spiritual maladies because it is inherently, sociopathically self-destructive. You're sending yourself to go kill yourself when you support war. Because we are all each other in different body envelopes. One easy lesson that life teaches us through every moment that we live it is that if you fall for the ego trap will fuck you over and chew you up and spit you back out and go, okay, Did you learn your lesson? No? Oh, I'm going to snap right back up on you in a bit. Bigger and harder and stronger. Because that's what ego traps are. That's what they do. It's their function in the universe. That is part of the test. So we should all be deeply concerned. This is, Russia, 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 and leaks, 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 and Scaramucci, Scaramucci, Scaramucci. He, as his debt to society, should dance the fandango on whatever that dance show's called. Period. He owes us that. Otherwise, he should be ridiculed for the rest of history for not being able to do the fandango. And we should not support him in this crazy live Facebook event. Let me come full circle. I think that's his own ego trap he's going to be falling into, I don't know. I think it's crazy that we're falling for this scripted drama that they present to us. Because most of this, and I said this a long time ago, most of this got really tedious and boring and fake sounding and theatrical. So hyper theatrical as to feel scripted. His emotionality might be genuine. I think that everyone is really as high strung and stressed out about the country and the nation's reaction to what they're trying to do. But the shoes that drop, the drip, 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 and the way in which, information comes out of that White House like water through a sieve. This is part of the disinformation agenda. Whoever's running it, whoever's paying for the money in the Panama Papers accounts, not Russia, not Putin. Putin's just taken one of the largest chunks because he's done some of the most work, I suppose. But whoever's paying for this is, has got an army of strategists and propagandists and writers, and this all seems too stupid to be real. If it is real and this level of incompetence is just genuinely happening before our eyes, we should still brace ourselves and try to strike in anticipation of any move by the President of the United States and chief of the biggest organized war party team in the world from firing any generals. Because it is one hop, skip, and jump away from that anyone with enough greed, sociopathy, self-loathing, and emotional trauma to work out will make that power grab, will be seduced to try and do the unthinkable and turn the United States of America, Trumptopia, formerly known as the United States of America, into a legit, war profiteering dictatorship. We're treading a thin line, the pretend thin line already about that. And if that's unpatriotic of me to say, please forgive me. I love this place. I also love the Mother Nature underneath this place 10 times more. Do you understand what I'm saying? This place, this nation that we all belong to, that we're all arguing about, that we're all freaking out about, that we're all commenting on, that we're all criticizing and or hating each other about, that's just an idea. A beautiful idea, which has been corrupted, like all ideas get. All ideas get corrupted. Yo, hashtag, send that out into the world, please. And that beautiful idea can heal itself of the corruption, but it's up to us to realize and understand and separate ourselves from our attachment to the idea or the multiple, because there's a lot of flavors out there of what this place is or ought to be or should be, and start understanding this nature that we live in, and realize that there are no such thing as borders, there are no such thing as nations, that there are no such thing as different people. There's just people, and there's just this glorious gift we almost ironically continue to call Mother Earth. But maybe I'm the crazy one, folks. That being said, I'm going to thank you for tuning in. That's most of the craziness I wanted to talk about today. There was a few other things, but I kind of dropped all my notes and then lost track of everything in gathering them back up again. So now really, really old notes are mixed up with really, really new notes and personal notes that I was, stuff that I wanted to take care of, and blah, 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 blah. Oh, I guess I just want to say, let's not say goodbye without acknowledging this. If you see the patterns I'm pointing to, then the call is being sent out to you too. We need to heal this great nation of ours and heal the image, the icon, the idea of it. Because we do. It is helpful to operate with ideas. I'm not castigating all ideas as evil. Don't get me wrong. I just know that ideology, when it becomes all caps ideology, is by default, by definition, by the way it works, a kind of mental slavery. And that doesn't mean that we need to hate, there's a meme floating around, which is great. I wish I had it in front of me. But it's, to paraphrase it horribly, as I am wont to do, for I don't have that kind of photographic memory. I have a better recall of the sort of look and feel of the meme than I do of the exact phrasing of the words on the image macro. But it says something to the effect of, the anti-government movement is not about hating America. It's about refusing to be oppressed by the current corrupt people in power. Let us close the show on that. May you have a beautiful day. If you appreciate what's going on here, please, oh please, oh please, share it, like it, heart it, follow it. Do the usual social media thing you do. I know that I'm presenting some radically out-of-the-box kind of thinking here, and I do not want to be misunderstood or miscategorized. I do hope that my intent comes through and that my love and my compassion, not only for all my fellow Trumptopians, but all my fellow Americans and all my fellow humans out there, in this dimension and in all others. Because once we're done healing here locally, guess what we got to do? See, forgive me, I know I was focusing on shorter shows, but when the words come, I can't deny them. Let me tell you something that's kind of funny and kind of real about the universe. If you're familiar with Rick and Morty, and I know that show is somewhat distasteful to others, to some people, and a little bit borderline offensive and or controversial to some, but there's a beautiful elegance to a particular dimension of it, and that's that it seems to me that some of the writers have a deep understanding of either really advanced quantum mechanical physics or, some other maybe ancient mystic cosmological interpretation of the multiverse. Because they present a direct, a comically perfect, the tone is so abruptly now and, rough around the edges and not lost or bound or mangled or caught up in the all the silly ways I would probably ramble to try to describe advanced ideas or concepts about multiverse ness, which border on the absurd, of course, but are not beyond the realm of possibility. And one of them is that we truly live in a multiverse of multiverses where all that is possible is playing out. So there's an infinite number of Trumptopias, either branching away from each other in potentiality or collapsing back together and remerging in certainty. Very much as it is eloquently presented in one particular episode of Rick and Morty, where the three main characters, Rick, Morty, and the sister, Amber? Or Heather? Oh, crap, I can't remember her name. Forgive me, that sounds horrible. I'm not a chauvinist. I love her character, and she's awesome. But I'm just terrible at names. And they disrupt their own timelines in a discrete bubble of timeline disruption, and they keep splitting them apart. It's epically, wonderfully presented. At any rate, yeah, the universe is like that, folks. Let that news break on you. It really is. And that sounds crazy to say, but that might help wrap your brain around some of the rest of the crazy things I say. But I digress. It is a beautiful Thursday morning, and I have a delightful day job that I'm quite grateful and thankful for, and really truly love going to, that I must get ready to go to. Thanks for tuning in. I hope, as always, that this has been to some degree interesting and to some degree thought-provoking, and I hope that you can sense that cage that I'm trying to rattle in your mind. It's time for me to play the right soundtrack for this podcast segment. I played the wrong one. That was before the Promised Land. I think also by Art of Escape, but I'm not sure. My little playlist for some reason is not showing the artist. But as all the music tracks that I play are available on freemusicarchive.org. I like to represent, because if you're a fellow podcast creator or some other kind of interesting media artist and you're looking for a quality source for royalty-free, Creative Commons licensed music available for your use, that's one of the great places to go. No disrespect to all the folks and/or spam bots that posted on, I think it was my YouTube page, that if I ever wanted some free music to use, to go visit their site. I have not had the time to do the due diligence on those posts to see if they are legit or if they are spam bots. They were exactly identical in their phrasing, so it sounds a little spammy, but who knows? I don't mean to prejudge it. At any rate, if you appreciate what I do and you want to help me upgrade this show from me just rambling to me hiring, if maybe at under market value, a co-host of some kind, then please, oh please. And of course, if you don't have the disposable income, don't. I do not expect or really want you to give me money. And I know that's horrible, right? All my spiritual friends always tell me, my postmodern spiritual friends that have a slightly different, they paid a lot of money. Oh gosh, forgive me. This isn't breaking news. This is totally a different podcast segment. But I just want to say, I don't mean to offend you guys whenever I talk about money in negative terms. It's something I'm still on the fence about. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, there's a big sector of the spiritual community that has opted to have an arguably neutral or maybe positive spiritual interpretation of money as symbol and as spiritual energy. And all things are energy, so I'm not in opposition to that. Like literally, E equals MC squared. And I say this all the time in the show, forgive me for being redundant. But matter is energy in a very slow, dense state, and can be, with some effort, and with the aid of other energy, converted into energy, as we know from very benign examples, but also that happens in other higher order examples. I know from my own personal experience that I understand that there are energies at work in the universe. This is breaking news. Let me break this news to you. It should not be considered hippie new age woo woo when people talk about energy work or energy healing. Some of the language around it is fruity as fuck. No offense, guys. It is. Some of the angel talk and fairy talk, etc. And I'm not judging it. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to be funny and a little bit thought provoking. Because as humans, we always get fixated on the labels instead of on the act. And I'm not accusing all spiritual power energy workers of doing that. I'm just saying we develop language culture on top of the practice at all times. We always do that. And that's something we need to work on as a species. But energy is real, yo. Your thoughts are energy. Your words are energy. Your emotions are energy. The building blocks of your material avatar are also energy, vibrating at a very specific frequency and coalescing into the physical shapes that you experience. But, you want to trip out on some news that should rattle people's brains? This is some science news, which should really rock your political perspective. It really did when I understood it, when I accepted this was science, not just spirituality. Science and ancient mystic spirituality converge here. Science has, for a long time, told us that in our daily lives, for reals, what we actually experience is not the direct phenomena. I mean, it's an indirect reconstruction. It's an image that represents that which we perceive on all levels. Our eyeballs are not glass windows to a screen in the middle of our skull. Our eyeballs reduce all the frequencies of light, which are energy in the first place, available to us, and they reduce them into an electrochemical impulse, which has, it has data on it. It carries information. It is information. It is no longer the actual thing. It is a representation of that thing, which our brain has to decode and assemble a holographic representation of inside our brain, or more accurately, in between our brain and the next closest dimension that we have access to, which we don't take account of. We still think our language is all, our science language and our culture language is still way behind the times. We think in 3D and 4D and 5D. And kudos and shout outs to all the people encouraging humanity to step up to living in 4D and 5D and using that sort of encouragement language. We do. We need to access our higher dimensional, planes more readily, because we don't, and we haven't allowed ourselves to for centuries. And what I don't know which one it is, or what you call it, or what the right language is. And spiritual people all have different words for it, and the words matter less than the phenomena, which can be directly experienced. And that's that. It can be perceived, the distinction that I'm drawing. And here's the shocking news: you can comprehend it internally. It just takes a bit of silence and meditation and practice. In practice, one of the other layers of illusion that happens in our own minds is that we create this hologram of what we see, what we hear, what we taste and touch and smell, because they all get translated into electrical code first. It takes nanoseconds, microseconds, seconds, nths of seconds, which are just a measuring stick for a phenomena that's permanently emanating. But that shit is real, yo. And all of it is energy. Even the phenomena that we're perceiving and re-representing to ourselves holographically inside, in between, it emerges up from the sponge material that we call our brain and interacts with a level or a dimension that we've ignored for quite a long time. And if we had better, more direct awareness and interaction with, practice using, accessing, and knowing how to be with, we would all live better lives, and we would not be at war. Just saying. Some might call this, and I may be applying the wrong term here because the Akashic records might be closer to source, but it's all sort of interconnected in onion-like fractal layers, and there's no sense in arguing about the labels, like I keep saying. But our experience of reality is co-emergent, with our body avatar's process of perception, codification, re-representation in a holographic form, and that which is the observer of the process. And the observer of the process is not bodily, physically. If you're a mundanist, as I like to call them, if you're a materialist, which is often confused for materialismist, if you're a materialist and you only believe in atoms and the periodic table and that's it, and you don't think there's spirit, then you won't find the observer in the corpse when you dissect it. But if you allow yourself to think beyond those limitations, as many scientists are doing, shout out to, and I cannot remember his name because this is someone I met personally, but in a time when I wasn't considering myself a hobbyist, opinion commentator, or what do you call those? I'm running out of time. I got 4 minutes and almost 20 seconds left. So much for shorter episodes. Forgive me, folks. I've got too much to share. But that's real news that really I'm trying to break to folks. That whole thing is real. That whole energy level is real. And just because you've never directly experienced evidence of it does not mean it does not exist. It means that you are operating at the place that the oppressor has wanted us and has oppressed us to being, our default operating level. Our body is capable of operating in much higher orders, even without achieving the thing we call ascension or enlightenment or any of the awakening steps. But that have to be saved for another episode of a more appropriately titled segment like Almost Daily Zencast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, I hope I haven't offended you. Tune in to a future episode of Meditations, which will be dropping hopefully within a week or so. Those ones take a little bit longer time because I actually try to practice the meditation that I'm going to share for about a week before sharing it, just to live it and be it and know that that it is a meditation and not just words on a page. If you've got interesting news that you think is worthy of sharing that isn't being reported on enough, it can be anything. I know that I ramble and I always tie everything into the spiritual, realms. I hope no one gets too offended by that. But I do like to treat this as a news talk show. I wouldn't dare call myself a citizen journalist, but I do want to collaborate with true amateur citizen journalists out there as a sort of let me be a commentator desk that you can drop your report at. Something crazy happening in your community? Do you know of a story that the world just needs to hear about that CNN, MSNBC, any of the main oligarchic entities aren't picking up on? Shoot me an email at theincorrigiblemrzeppo@gmail.com. I will try to do my due diligence on any and all submissions, so if you're out to peddle some fake news, trust that I'll be trying to verify and consulting with others who are better in the know about that sort of shit, so don't bring any of that nonsense. Or, and if you do, brace yourself to be called out on that, because fake news is usually pretty obvious. But I want real news. We want to, here at this show, we, the Royal We, want to bring our listeners, and I say that to empower the future collaborative team, as I am trying to manifest something beyond, just me rambling at myself in a microphone. So, join the team, especially if you live at a place where interesting shit is going down and people are not talking about it yet. As always, may peace, love, and grooviness be with you. Share the love. Be good humans.